reading from the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus said, "For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for the usual daily wage, he sent them into the vineyard. And when he went out about 9 o'clock, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and he said to them, 'You also go into the vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right.' And so they went. And when he went out again about noon, and about 3 o'clock, he did the same. And about 5 o'clock, he went out and found others standing around. And he said to them, 'Why are you standing here idle all day?' They said to him, 'Because no one has hired us.' And he said to them, 'You also go into the vineyard.' And when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, 'Call the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and then going to the first.' And when those hired about 5 o'clock came, each of them received the usual daily wage. And now when the first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received the usual daily wage. And when they had received it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, 'These last worked only 1 hour, and you've made them equal to us who've borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat.' But he replied to one of them, 'Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last the same as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or are you envious because I'm generous?' So the last will be first, and the first will be last." Wow, the only thing that makes followers of Jesus more angry than all of his talk about needing to forgive our enemies is this: the amazing, astonishing, and infuriating grace of God, where God, as he says, Jesus says here, "Am I not allowed to do with what is mine, what I wish to do?" And of course, God is able to do that. And it just hits wrong for those who have been working diligently to amend our lives, to make sacrifices, to choose rightly sometimes when we'd rather choose wrongly, and all of this. And here comes somebody at the last minute just loping along, and there's the grace of God just waiting to swoop them up. That can be really, really challenging for some people. And it doesn't come from a place of meanness or any kind of ill will, I think, for the people who are receiving even more grace than we perceive we might be receiving. But it comes from a sense of how in God's name are we to make sense of this life and make decisions and calculate our I was going to say our profit loss statements. That's probably not far from the truth. How are we supposed to find a sense of justice and fairness in this world if we've got this irrational God running around who just says it doesn't matter what you do if you're a complete jerk forever and ever, amen, up until the last minute, and then you turn to God in grace? Well, sure, you're just accepted and given the same grace everyone else. That can really rankle those who have been engaged in the struggle, mostly with ourselves, about what's the relationship between what we do with our lives and God's love for us. What's the relationship between what we do with our lives and God's love, God's mercy, and God's grace? And the answer is God tells us through this little parable of Jesus that God's ways of counting are not the same as ours. God sees things that we don't see. Again, don't forget that there's this side conversation from the vineyard owner who says, "Why have you been standing around?" Or why are you standing idle all day? And they said, "Because no one's asked us to work. No one's given us work to do. We would have been in the field the whole day." So the vineyard owner has more information than those who've been, busy the whole day, bearing the heat of the day and the labor of the vineyard. They are unaware of what's been going on in the lives of those who came last. and received that grace from the vineyard owner paying that out. It's tough medicine to swallow until we realize that actually, many of us might instinctively want to align ourselves in this story or place ourselves in this story with the person who was hired first, or certainly the person who was hired by 9 a.m. or noon. But very few of us would see ourselves as the person hired at 5 p.m. and then receiving a full measure of God's grace. But in fact, that may be exactly where we are in the story. And if that's the case, we need to be very grateful for this rankling parable. And instead of seeing it as loss for us that we've worked harder than most and received the same wage, which I think is where we're meant to at first catch this story, maybe it's worth considering that we don't know everything going on. And just as those who were working the field didn't know about the folks who were in the square and told the landowner, we've been ready to work but haven't been asked to work, just as those in the field didn't know the story of those in the square don't know who's been working longer than they have been. And so how do we know where we are in this economy of God's our labor in the field and God's grace towards us? The good news in this parable is that, challenging though it may be to our need to quantify and bring about fairness in all things, it is actually very good news for us that God's love for us and God's grace is not contingent on the work we've done, but rather on our willingness to come into God's field, God's vineyard, and to be a part of God's project in ourselves, God's grace in us, and our participation in God's bringing about of the kingdom in our world. So may this reflection help invite you into your gratitude and your irritation with God's grace, and may God bless you and keep you this day and always. Amen.